Hey guys, tonight we're unraveling one of the strangest bedtime tales whispered through silk corridors and golden screens. The Emperor's Invisible Cat. You're in the Forbidden City now, where lanterns sway on red-painted beams, guards bow at shadows, and every step echoes with the weight of 500 years of gossip. Imagine a palace so vast, it had over 9,000 rooms, and yet tonight, everyone's trying to avoid one particular hallway because they think there's an invisible cat roaming it. You walk slowly, almost too carefully, like the floorboards might tattle on you. The air smells like incense and steamed dumplings. A gong rings in the distance. You pass a servant who's tiptoeing while holding a small ceramic bowl, full of cream trembling in his hands. You ask him who it's for. He shushes you with wild eyes. "The Emperor's cat," he whispers, as if even that word could get him clawed. You blink. "What cat?" He glances around, then whispers, "Exactly." So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I'm always curious who's out there drifting with me. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive at the inner throne hall, the most sacred part of the palace. It smells faintly of jasmine and old paper. The Emperor is seated, looking like a statue carved from porcelain and power. Gold robes shimmer on his body like dragon scales, and beside him, on a silk cushion, is nothing. Just an empty cat-sized pillow, but he smiles and strokes the air gently. "She's purring," he says. "She likes you." You nod, because what else do you even say? This is how the madness started. A week ago, the Emperor, Zhao Long of the Peacock Dynasty, stood before the court and calmly declared, "My cat has learned to disappear. You will not see her again, but she is always watching." Historians still argue whether this was a spiritual metaphor, a political power play, or just a side effect of the Emperor drinking too much plum wine during the spring festival. One fringe theory: the Emperor never had a cat. It was a joke he forgot to stop telling. A really, really long-running inside joke. But once the imperial word was spoken, it became law. And so the invisible cat became real. At first, the court chuckled behind silk sleeves. "Oh, how clever, Your Majesty." But the laughter stopped when Zhao Long screamed in the middle of the night that someone had stepped on her tail. And even though no cat was found, nor tail, 3 officials were demoted the next day. One wept so loudly he was relocated to the outer province of Regret. Word spread like fire across rice parchment. The Emperor's cat was invisible and angry. The palace adapted quickly. Servant schools added invisible pet etiquette to training. Leave a bowl of milk in each hallway. Never sit unless you've patted the cushion first. If you hear purring, do not speak. Within days, the entire Forbidden City became a surreal circus. Imagine 10,000 people trying not to offend a creature they couldn't see, couldn't hear, and had never once touched. One general refused to enter the war room until someone confirmed the cat wasn't in his chair. It took 6 monks and a dog to convince him. You find yourself adjusting too. You walk slower. You double-check chairs. And when no one's looking, you whisper, "Nice kitty," before entering a room. Because what if? One morning, in the golden glow of dawn, the emperor made a new proclamation. She now lives among you. She goes where she pleases. She knows who is kind. The court bowed. One man fainted. The empress rolled her eyes. The imperial record-keepers were furious. How do we document an invisible cat? One scribe invented a stamp with little paw prints, placing them randomly across scrolls. He said it was her seal of approval. This idea caught on. Before long, palace paperwork was littered with invisible cat signatures, and no one dared question it. Historians still argue whether this was the birth of decorative rubber stamping in Chinese bureaucracy. One day, you walk past the kitchens. There's a new sign. No anchovies. The cat disapproves. The head chef bows solemnly. She vomited last time. We heard it. But did anyone see it? Of course not. This cat had become more than feline. It was now spirit, symbol, maybe even God. And the weirdest part? The emperor seemed happier than he had in years. He chuckled alone at banquets, fed air with chopsticks, and declared, "She told me that the soup was bland." The royal chef immediately fled the country. You start to wonder if this was genius. Maybe the emperor didn't need control of people. He only needed them to believe he was talking to something that did. And then, one evening, you hear it. Just a faint shuffle, a soft tap on tile. Maybe the wind? You look down. Nothing. Still, your heart skips. A part of you wants to believe, not because of politics or punishment, but because an invisible cat is just kind of awesome. Some nights, that's all you need to feel like the world still has a little mystery left in it. Section 2. You wake up before sunrise, and the palace is already buzzing like a hive of paranoid bees. Word has spread, again. Someone spilled tea in the moon pavilion, and there's debate over whether the cat was sleeping under the table at the time. Did anyone hear a yowl? No, but Ming tripped and apologized out loud. And what did he say? He said, "Sorry, sweetie." That must have been the cat. Poor Ming has been reassigned to scroll dusting for the next decade. You trudge toward the kitchens, where the staff now holds daily cat avoidance briefings. A new chart is tacked on the bamboo wall. Suspected feline hotspots, last 72 hours. Emperor's pillow behind the incense altar. On top of Minister Zhang's head, unconfirmed. Inside the koi pond, a fish is missing. You watch as a group of senior servants debate the most polite way to bow to an empty space. Someone suggests laying out fresh fish on rooftops to appease the feline spirit. Someone else suggests cutting a mouse-shaped rice dumpling as an offering. One woman, eyes wide with sleep deprivation, insists the cat will forgive you if you hum lullabies near cupboards. No one questions her. She's the emperor's favorite foot warmer. By mid-morning, the palace is in full-on superstition mode. Someone crafts tiny cat-sized sandals and leaves them at the foot of the main stairs. In case she wants to go for a stroll, he says. The guards post up and salute the slippers. Inside the bathhouse, someone sets aside a tub. just water and floating lotus petals. She might be invisible, a washerwoman mutters, but that doesn't mean she doesn't need a soak. You watch as one old man lays out a silk robe with paw holes cut in the sleeves. If she ever becomes visible, he mutters, we'll be ready. Historians still argue whether this marked the earliest recorded outbreak of feline-induced mass hysteria, or the birth of cosplay for cats. Then come the rules. A full invisible cat. Etiquette manual is distributed by imperial decree. Article 1. Never close doors fully. She may be following you. Article 2. If you hear a meow, drop everything and bow. Article 3. Should you sneeze unexpectedly, apologize to the cat immediately. Article 4. Do not say the word dog within palace walls, ever. You read the rules, blink twice, then read them again. This is your life now. But what's weirder? You start getting used to it. It's amazing how fast humans can normalize nonsense. 1 week ago, you would have laughed. Now you hold doors open for air. You nod to empty chairs. You think twice before crossing sunbeams, because that's where she might nap. You're not the only one losing it. The guards are twitchy. They've begun carrying string with them, dragging it softly behind their spears, just in case the cat feels playful. It becomes a competition. Whose string will maybe be pounced on? No one wins. But one man claims the air near his string twitched. He is given an immediate promotion. In the lotus garden, the empress sits with her attendants. She sips her tea and sighs. This was a quiet palace once, she murmurs. Now everyone's whispering to the floor. You glance over, see a young servant massaging thin air with 2 fingers. I'm giving her ear scritches, she explains. She likes the left side. The empress closes her eyes and mutters, I married a lunatic. That night, during a private court banquet, the emperor suddenly freezes mid-bite. She's upset, he says, scowling. The room falls silent. One brave eunuch clears his throat. Your Majesty, may I ask, why? She says, the emperor intones, that someone used her litter box scrolls to wrap dumplings. A gasp, then chaos. Paper is shredded. Apologies fly. One poor dumpling boy is seen climbing over a wall before he can be exiled. Later, over dessert, the emperor chuckles and says, she was joking. No one laughs, no one dares. Behind the throne, a hidden alcove has become a shrine. There's no statue, of course. How do you carve what no one sees? But it holds things the cat might like. A satin ribbon, a jade fish pendant, 3 little bells that don't ring. One servant prays to it every morning. For patience, she explains, and to avoid being scratched in my dreams. And yes, people now report cat dreams. I felt fur, says one man. I woke up with a hairball, says another. He purred into my taxes, says a scribe. Historians still debate whether these dreams were mass suggestion, moldy rice wine, or some early psychic feline phenomenon. A fringe text in the Book of Oddities claims cats can visit sleeping minds. Another insists cats created dreams in the first place. No one can prove anything. That's part of the magic. In the palace library, You find a servant carefully writing on scrolls with a single hair. "Cat hair," he says with a wink. "But the cat's invisible." "Exactly." You stare at him. He stares back. No one blinks. This is your life now. You begin leaving out scraps of roast duck, just in case. You stop stepping on floor mats with too much confidence. You learn to meow quietly, as a courtesy. One night, you wake up to a faint bell sound. You sit up, heart pounding. There's nothing there. But the next morning, the meat bun you left on the sill is gone. Section 3. You're scrubbing ink stains off the imperial scroll desk. Don't ask how you got that job. When you hear the eunuchs whispering, again. They gather like pigeons around a fountain, fluttering silk sleeves and leaning in far too close for comfort. You drift nearer, pretending to organize brushes. One of them, the particularly twitchy one with the mole shaped like a comma, says in a hushed tone, "She spoke to me last night." The others freeze. "She said the soup was too salty," a collective gasp. "You heard actual words?" He nods solemnly. "In ancient dialect, from behind the curtain." Another eunuch hisses, "You can't speak ancient dialect. I can feel it." A heated debate erupts about whether feline telepathy requires translation or if it arrives pre-localized in your brain like a poorly dubbed opera. Historians still argue whether eunuchs, deprived of certain distractions, became more sensitive to spectral whispers. One fringe theory even claims they were chosen not for political loyalty, but for their cat-listening potential. You leave the scene quickly, before they notice you and ask which side you're on. You're not ready to admit you've also thought you heard something once. A faint little sigh, like wind brushing over velvet, right as you opened a closet. There was no breeze. There was no velvet. But maybe? That night, the whispers spread. She meowed in iambic meter. She hissed at the tax reform proposal. She purred when I walked past the sundial. One cook insists she found a poem scratched into a bamboo steamer. No one believes her, until it disappears. Now everyone believes her. A rumor ignites. The cat not only speaks, but listens, carefully. This changes everything. Court officials begin speaking in code. "Let's schedule a meeting on Project Meow Meow," says a general. "You mean troop movements?" Shh, she could be napping in this vase. Scrolls are burned. Debates are held in bathhouses. One minister begins stuffing his ears with cotton soaked in soy sauce. "It neutralizes the listening aura," he says. His beard smells like stir-fry for weeks. Even you, just a humble scroll cleaner, start humming lullabies before talking, just in case it puts her in a forgiving mood. Then comes the moment that resets the entire tone of the palace. A formal report is filed. The chief historian, a man who hasn't smiled since the Comet of 43, submits a sealed document to the emperor. Its title? Possible Origins and Oral Accounts of the Invisible Imperial Cat Entity, Volnal I. The court holds its breath. The emperor opens the scroll, reads the first few lines, then bursts out laughing. "Make it bedtime reading," he says, "for everyone." And just like that, the palace gains a new ritual, evening cat myth hour. Every night before lights out, Someone must read a passage from the official cat log, now a growing series of wild guesses and poetic nonsense. Some entries claim the cat was a gift from the moon goddess, who forgot to make her visible. Others say she was born from a tear the emperor shed when his favorite sandal broke. One particularly strange theory: she's not a cat at all, but every cat, past and present, merged into one invisible super-feline haunting the dynasty until justice is done for all dropped dishes and ignored naps. You have your own theory. You keep it to yourself, for now. The eunuchs, however, are taking things further. They now wear small bells on their sashes. Why, you ask? So she knows we're coming. Isn't that your job, not hers? She gets startled easily. One has started scratching furniture corners to leave familiar scent marks. Another naps during work hours because she likes sleeping near me. The guards protest, but the emperor overrules them. He's bonding, he says. Historians still argue whether this marked the birth of the palace pet caretaker role in imperial service records. During a rare thunderstorm, the eunuchs gather in the south corridor, each with a bowl of broth and a string toy. They sit cross-legged in reverent silence. Lightning flashes. Thunder rolls. The palace seems to hold its breath. And then the torch at the far end flickers. The air shifts. You think, just for a second, you hear the softest sound, a meow. Not a kitten's chirp, nor an old Tom's groan. Something balanced, elegant, dismissive, like, finally you're listening. Everyone looks at each other. No one moves. Then one eunuch, trembling, lifts his bowl. To Her Majesty, the Silent One. They all echo it. To Her Majesty. The moment passes, but from that night on, the eunuchs speak less, and when they do, it's always in rhyme. The emperor, of course, is thrilled. Finally, he says, reclining on his jade chaise, my cat has her own following. And he decrees a new palace position, Whisker Chronicler of the Imperial Tale, whose job is to document all meows, scratches, hairballs, and ghostly flicks of the tail, real or imagined. You apply for it. You get it. Your first entry reads, felt a chill, something swished. Probably wasn't the curtains. You're proud of it. The emperor calls it profound. Now you sit in the corner of the throne room, quill in hand, eyes scanning empty cushions. Every day you record nothing. Every night you write about everything. And when the eunuchs whisper, you no longer listen out of curiosity. You listen for her, just in case she speaks again. Section 4. It starts with the milk. At first, the bowls left throughout the palace were symbolic, half jokes, half offerings. But then the emperor declared they must be full at all times, refreshed twice daily. She prefers it cool, but not cold, he explained solemnly. Room temperature, stirred clockwise. You are now responsible for one of the North Hall bowls. It's carved from jade and rests on a tiny embroidered mat featuring fish doing Tai Chi. Every morning, you bow, pour carefully, and whisper, your humble servant wishes you good digestion. You no longer think that's weird. One night, the milk goes untouched. You report this. The emperor's eyes narrow. She's displeased. He doesn't elaborate. The next day, the palace changes its schedule. Candles are lit in reverse order. Lunch is moved 3 minutes later. All staff is ordered to hum a calming tune to restore her peace of mind. This tune? A melody based on the sound of curtains flapping, which the court composer insists he recreated, faithfully using silk and desperation. The guards now hum it in shifts. The emperor stops sleeping. "I can't hear her purring," he says. "It's too quiet." He looks off, bags under his eyes, tunic askew. Once he asks his reflection if it's been fed. He begins pacing the throne room, orders the servants to arrange cushions in paw print formations. At one point, he demands a full cat-size replica of the palace be constructed from candied lotus paste and gold leaf. You watch this unfold from your whisker chronicler corner, jotting down phrases like, "Emperor sniffed air suspiciously, claimed he smelled paw sweat, and has forbidden anyone from saying the word woof." Historians still argue whether this was the beginning of the emperor's slow spiral into feline-induced madness, or just a bad month. The palace physician is summoned, a gentle old man who smells like dried orange peels and panic. He listens patiently to the emperor's complaints. "She hasn't curled on my feet in 5 nights. No biscuit crumbs in her usual spot. And the birds, she used to hiss at them. I haven't heard a single hiss." The physician nods slowly. "Perhaps she is sulking." "Sulking?" "Yes. Cats are emotionally manipulative." The emperor is horrified. "What have I done to offend her?" The next day, he sends out 50 apology letters. Each begins, "To my dearest, most exquisite whiskered empress of silence." They are burned in rose incense and delivered to random corners of the palace. Still no purring. The emperor forbids clapping, whistling, and any flute notes above C-sharp. "She hates high-pitched nonsense," he growls. You are awakened in the middle of the night to transcribe an imperial dream. "She was there," he mutters, half asleep. "But she had wings, and she judged me." You write that down. Your job, after all, is to document truth, or at least hallucinated royal feline prophecy. In a fit of exhaustion, the emperor commissions a council of cat experts. They are gathered from nearby provinces, poets, tailors, fishmongers, one guy who makes eye contact with strays real good. They arrive confused, honored, underfed. Their mission? Restore the purr. They try everything. A choir sings 99 different meow pitches. The floor is covered in crushed lavender. One man builds a mechanical mouse that chases itself. Nothing works. Until the youngest member, a monk from the river temple, kneels before the emperor and says, "She may not be gone. She may just be tired of being expected." The emperor blinks. That night, he orders the palace to be silent. No candles, no humming, no milk. Nothing. And what happens next is beautiful. You lie awake in your chambers, wrapped in a blanket that still smells like candle smoke and overcooked duck. Outside, the wind rustles gently through the bamboo. The silence is thick, honest, and then, so soft, it's barely there. Purr. a ripple in the air, a sound that settles right behind your ear, like a tiny motor running on joy. You sit up. There's nothing in your room, but your pillow is warm, warmer than it should be. Word spreads slowly, carefully. No one shouts, but eyes widen, smiles curl. She's back. Or maybe she never left. The Emperor sleeps a full 8 hours, for the first time in weeks. He wakes with toast crumbs on his robe and says, "She curled on my chest. I think she forgave me." You write it all down, not because it makes sense, but because it feels real. And that's more than enough. Section 5. The painter's name is Jing Fei, and he hasn't been seen in daylight since the Emperor gave him the most impossible commission in imperial history. Paint me a portrait of my cat. Now that might sound simple, cute even, but remember, no one has ever seen the cat. Jing Fei bows low, says yes, of course. It would be an honor. He even smiles. But as he walks away from the throne, you can see his left eye twitching like a sparrow in a teacup. You later find him in his studio, surrounded by blank scrolls and sweating so much it looks like he's being boiled from the inside. "How do you paint? What you can't see," he mutters. You shrug. Outline a mystery and call it divine. He doesn't laugh. Instead, he begins experimenting, first with soft grays and ghostly lines, then with gold leaf to represent holy fur aura. At one point, he tapes a feather to a paintbrush and tries letting the wind paint for him. That doesn't work, but it's a bold attempt. He interviews palace staff. "What did she feel like?" he asks. "Like walking through a sigh," replies the cook. "What color is she?" Same shade as truth. Jing Fei stares at them with the expression of a man being haunted by poetry. One eunuch offers help. "She once brushed past my ankle, and it felt like the memory of my mother's hair." Jing Fei thanks him, writes it down, then stares blankly at the paper for 3 hours. Historians still argue whether Jing Fei's descent into cat-induced artistic fugue was genuine spiritual torment, or a really clever way to dodge military conscription. Finally, after 10 days locked in his studio, he emerges. The court gathers. Even the Empress is here, tapping her fan impatiently. The tension is thick, like soup made entirely of anxiety. The scroll is unfurled. And there it is. Nothing. A blank canvas, framed in golden ink. No strokes, no paint. Just empty space with a title in soft calligraphy. "She looks best when you don't try." Gasps, then silence, then applause. The Emperor beams. "Perfect." The Empress mutters, "Of course it is." Jing Fei collapses from sheer relief. You approach the painting. There's something about it. A warmth, a calm, like it's daring you to relax. "Is this art?" someone whispers. "It's cat," someone else replies. The painting is hung in the Hall of Harmony. A velvet rope keeps people from getting too close. Not because of the painting, but because it's rumored the actual invisible cat naps there now. Every afternoon, between the third and fourth incense sticks. No one risks disproving this. You notice something else. Visitors begin bowing to the space on the scroll, not the scroll itself. Musicians compose a melody called "The Silence of Her Pause." Dancers perform choreography around an empty cushion. A playwright stages a 3-act tragedy where the main character is never seen, but all other characters revolve around her, grieving, adoring, resenting. She becomes more than a cat. She becomes concept. The painter receives over 200 new commissions to paint other invisible beings. His style? Minimalist. Price? Criminal. And yet, people line up for months. Late one night, you sneak back into the Hall of Harmony. The lanterns are dim. The scroll glows faintly in the moonlight. You sit before it, cross-legged, just staring, listening. There's no purr, no scratching, but there's presence. And then, a little sneeze. Right behind you. You turn around. Nothing but the scent of jasmine lingers in the air, and your sash feels tugged. Just a bit. You bow deeply. Just in case. The next day, a new scroll appears below the portrait. Not official, not signed. Just a tiny note in shaky brushstrokes. She visited me. I offered my lap. She chose my head. It's placed in a tiny wooden frame and left there. No one questions it. Others start leaving notes, too. I heard her lick her paw. She judged my outfit. She told me to take a nap, and I did. The hall becomes a shrine not to worship, but to confess. Historians still argue whether this marked the origin of early public wish walls, confessional art, or just the imperial staff slowly going poetically insane. Jingfei never paints again. He retires to a tiny village and opens a shop called Blank Scrolls Only. When asked why, he smiles and says, "I already painted perfection." You're not sure whether he's crazy or a genius, but every time you pass the portrait, your shoulders unclench a little. And sometimes, when the incense burns just right, you hear the whisper of whiskers. Section 6. It starts with the paw prints. Not the cute kind you'd find stamped in soft mud or rice flour. No, these are eerily precise, as if etched by wind on polished stone. You wake one rainy morning to a palace trembling with gossip. There are claw marks on the roof tiles of the Hall of Tranquility. And not just any marks. They appear impossibly high up, where no real cat could reach unless it had wings, supernatural athleticism, or its own private grappling hook. You run outside, along with every other underpaid servant, and crane your neck toward the rooftop. There they are. 6 perfect indentations in an elegant zigzag, like a feline river dance across imperial ceramic. One guard insists they weren't there the night before. Another claims he heard something skitter across the rafters just after midnight. Maybe it's not just invisible, someone whispers. Maybe it flies. The Emperor is notified. He's in the middle of painting koi with his fingers. Don't ask. But he immediately demands a ladder and climbs up himself, dragging the royal historian and a flute player with him for balance and emotional support. You watch from below as he crouches on the roof in his golden robes, tracing the prints with childlike wonder. "She's leaving us breadcrumbs," he says. "I believe those are roof tiles, Your Majesty," says the historian. Breadcrumbs, the emperor repeats, tapping his nose. Of knowledge. That evening, the emperor makes a proclamation. From now on, rooftop inspections shall occur nightly. The cat has chosen a higher path. Literally, we must respect her elevation. He names the spot the Soaring Paw Line and orders a shrine constructed on the eastern turret, complete with a bell, a fish wind chime, and a tiny satin hammock suspended from bamboo poles. It becomes sacred ground overnight. Anyone seen throwing rocks near it is sent to mop scrolls for 3 weeks. One nobleman sneezes too close and is fined an entire duck. But then the prints start showing up elsewhere, on the walls, along windowsills, inside the empress's jewelry box. She is not amused. She's judging my pearls, she fumes, tossing them aside. She never liked pearls. Soon, the palace is obsessed with tracking her movements. A full division of scribes is assigned to map every new print. A scroll is unfurled each morning showing the predicted routes. Throne room, garden, roof kitchen, fish barrel, koi pond, possible bath, empress's quarters, sudden U-turn, imperial tea chest. Some brave soul even draws a tiny crown on one print and labels it Midnight Royal Inspection. He receives a bonus and a stern warning. She does not wear crowns, says the emperor. She is the crown. To aid in observation, the emperor orders all the guards to carry tiny bells tied to silk threads. If the bells move without wind, the cat has passed. He calls it the perimeter defense grid. It doesn't work, but it does make the palace sound like a wind chime store during a monsoon. You hear bells all the time now. It's unclear if it's the cat or if your brain is just broken. And then come the gifts. No one knows who started it, but someone begins leaving small trinkets where paw prints appear. A dried fish scale, a cherry blossom, a haiku written on a plum pit. Soon, it's a full-blown ritual. Wherever new prints appear, someone leaves a gift, and sometimes they vanish by morning. Proof, says the emperor, that she accepts tribute. Historians still argue whether this act of invisible offering was the first known form of ambient art worship in imperial China, or just a palace-wide game of imagination ping-pong gone beautifully out of hand. One evening, during the spring festival, lightning splits the sky. The palace trembles under roaring thunder. Rain pours sideways. Everyone huddles indoors. Except you. You're on roof patrol duty with a scroll under your tunic and a lamp that keeps flickering out. You curse your luck until something stops you mid-step. There, on the wet tiles ahead, fresh prints, still glistening. You freeze. Your breath clouds the air. The prints trail along the spine of the rooftop, curve gracefully, then vanish mid-step. No slip, no smear, just gone. You write furiously in your log. 11:48 p.m. saw prints appear during storm. No cat visible. Vanished after 7th step. Wind changed direction. You hesitate, then add, felt warm pressure on shoulder, like fur without weight. You don't tell anyone. You just smile to yourself for the rest of the night. because you know something happened, even if it doesn't make sense. The next morning, a new decree. All scrolls must now be scented with honeysuckle oil. She finds parchment too bland. You nod obediently, and when the wind brushes your ear like a tiny breath, you whisper, "Thank you for visiting." Section 7. You're in the palace archives now, where the scrolls live and the dust has unionized. Everything smells like history, ink, and regret. The archivists wear robes 2 sizes too large and speak only in sighs. They don't like visitors, especially not ones asking about invisible cats. But you're not here for approval. You're here because something feels off. The cat isn't just here. She's always been here. Or at least, that's what the Emperor now believes. And if there's even a grain of truth to that, you figure someone, somewhere, must have written it down. You start with the easy stuff, lists of royal pets. It's not as glamorous as it sounds. Most entries read like grocery receipts. Qin Dynasty, 2 parrots, deceased. 4 turtles, escaped. 1 leopard, political. The Song Dynasty kept peacocks. The UN had a mongoose named Trouble, but nothing about cats that vanish into thin air. Until you stumble across a battered scroll labeled Beasts of the Vale. It's stuffed between documents on weather patterns and erotic poetry. You decide not to ask questions. Inside, you find this line. In the time before names, a feline roamed the court unseen. 1 eye blue, 1 made of absence. You reread it 5 times. 1 eye made of absence. The scholars argue over its meaning. One says it's metaphor for death. Another says it means the cat is a ghost. One guy just says, "That's deep," and goes back to picking wax from his ear. You find more clues, buried in poems. One courtier in 876 CE wrote, "I spilled wine where she slept. The wind clawed my cheek. She forgave me eventually." Another scroll from the Tang Dynasty describes a banquet where no meat was taken and yet none remained, followed by a drawing of a fish skeleton and a paw print made of gold leaf. Even better, a footnote reads, "It happened again last Thursday." This can't be coincidence. You bring your findings to Master Liang, the palace's oldest historian. He's roughly 110, kept alive solely by tea and spite. He looks over your scrolls, nods slowly, and says, "She's not the first." You lean in. "She?" you ask. Master Liang smiles. They've always called it a she, even in dynasties that banned female animals in court. Strange, right? You nod. And the prints? They go back centuries. Look hard enough, you'll find them carved into temple stones, painted on porcelain, even stitched into burial robes. He leads you to a locked chest, opens it with a key shaped like a cat's tail. Inside, a bundle of tiny bells, faintly tarnished. But when he shakes them, they don't ring, not even a whisper. "She took their sound," he says. "Didn't like it." You stare at the bells in silence. Historians still argue whether this treasure trove of feline folklore is evidence of a long-standing invisible cat lineage or just an elaborate prank spanning dynasties. One fringe theory suggests a secret society of cat priests, has kept the myth alive to maintain palace morale during food shortages and boring tax seasons. You, however, are beginning to think something very real is hiding in the folds of fantasy. That night, you sneak back into the archives alone. You light a single candle. The flame flickers strangely. You whisper, "If you've always been here, show me." Silence. Then, a thump. A scroll topples from the top shelf. You scramble over. It's old. Really old. The title is faded, but you catch 3 characters: Whisker, Shadow, Empire. You open it with trembling fingers. Inside, a single image. A cat-shaped silhouette with stars in its fur and no face. Beneath it, she walks between breaths, sleeps between empires. You blink. The image seems to shimmer. You close the scroll quickly, heart pounding. The next morning, there's a new paw print on your pillow. You sit in bed, wide-eyed. No one else could have done it. You even check your hair for ink. Nothing. You wrap the pillow in silk and stash it in your chest like treasure, which, to be fair, it probably is. The Emperor calls a council meeting. "I've seen the pattern," he says, waving his chopsticks like a scepter. "She's not just a palace cat. She's our dynasty's soul." No one dares question him. He orders the scribes to begin the scroll of her journeys, an ever-growing record of all sightings, prints, whispers, meows, and purr-adjacent phenomena. You are put in charge. Your desk is now buried under accounts like 3:04 a.m., curtains swayed, no wind. Midday, peach pit vanished mid-bite, felt judged. During chess game, opponent meowed instead of checkmate. Doesn't remember doing it. You keep them all, because history is made of nonsense that everyone believes. And now, so are you. Section 8. She arrives just after moonrise. No one knows where she came from. One moment, the courtyard was empty, and the next, there she is. A woman with a red umbrella, no shoes, and hair braided with silver thread. Her robes are stitched with herbs instead of embroidery. Basil along the sleeves, mint at the collar. A sprig of catnip tucked behind one ear. She hums like a tea kettle and smells like the apothecary's garden during a summer rain. Everyone stares. No one speaks. She walks straight past the guards, steps over a begonia bush, not around it, over it, and arrives at the foot of the Emperor's throne as if she had an appointment. He raises one eyebrow. "And you are?" "I'm the one she visits," she says, "but only when I bring the right poem." She never gives her name. The staff just calls her the herbalist. Some think she's a wandering sorceress. Others whisper she's a cat in disguise. One that figured out how to become human, but forgot to tell her face. She refuses gold, silk, titles, only wants poems. And not just any poems. She demands fresh ones, unread, unwritten even. She holds out a satchel and says, "I'll trade you a glimpse of her whiskers for one good metaphor. 2 if it makes me weep." The scribes are flabbergasted. The court poets are insulted. The palace dog is terrified. Despite everyone's confusion, the Emperor is delighted. Finally, someone who gets her. He invites her to dinner. She declines. "I dine with dew and dust," she says, petting the air. He offers her robes. "I already wear nightfall." He offers her a palace wing. "Too many doors," she replies. She prefers windows. The Empress is furious. "What does she even do?" The herbalist replies, "I listen." Historians still argue whether she was a prophet, a fraud, or the result of someone slipping mushroom powder into the wine rations. One fringe theory? She was the cat's voice, allowed to take shape only when the palace truly forgot how to speak. You are summoned to bring her writing supplies. She eyes you like a hawk studying a bowl of soup. "You're the chronicler." You nod. She nods back. "You don't believe, not fully. That's good." Cats hate fanatics. She scribbles a poem onto bamboo. She walks through time with paws unbound, a meow that echoes before it's found. She burns it in her palm. Ash curls upward in silence. She catches a wisp in a clay jar and whispers something into the smoke. You're not sure what language it is. It sounds like a purr wrapped around a sigh. Later that night, paw prints appear across the Emperor's ceiling. Not the floor, the ceiling. One right above his pillow. One above his desk. One above the bowl of dried plums he keeps even though he hates them. He weeps with joy. She's floating now. She's finally transcended. The herbalist just sips water from a thimble and mutters, "She's always floated. You just didn't look up." She begins teaching the staff how to make themselves worth visiting. Her tips are strange. Sleep with your eyes closed but your thoughts open. Hide a feather in your shoe to stay light. Never insult the moon. She's a friend of the cat. Some palace workers roll their eyes, but those who follow her instructions report strange events. A missing spoon returns, balanced on their head. Their tea never burns. One man swears he heard "bless you" after sneezing in his sleep. Then she disappears, just like that. One moment she's examining a paper crane for emotional honesty, and the next, she's gone. Not a trace, except for a jar, left on your desk. Inside, a single curled cat whisker, floating in honey. Labeled proof, maybe. You seal it. You don't tell anyone, but you write about it. Day 83. She sent someone to speak. We still don't know what was said. The Emperor mourns. He wears black for 3 days, writes 12 poems. 3 of them rhyme. One is just the word meow over and over in different brush styles. He commands the construction of a garden of her disappearances where anyone can sit, say nothing, and listen to the wind for signs of her purring. You spend hours there. So do others. No one talks. No one dares. It's the quietest and happiest you've ever seen the palace. Historians still debate whether this marked a spiritual awakening, mass delusion, or the most successful public relations campaign by an imaginary feline in recorded history. You don't debate, you just wait. And sometimes, when the wind shifts, you smell catnip. Section 9. It's early morning, and the kitchen is in chaos. Not the usual chicken chasing, pot clanging, someone burn the soup again chaos. No. This time it's official, state-sanctioned, full ceremonial chaos. The Emperor has declared today to be the feast of the empty pillow, the invisible cat's birthday. No one knows her birthday. No one knows her age or breed, or if she's ever actually consumed a single bite of palace food. But the Emperor insists. She told me in a dream it was today. She likes fish. And with that, the entire Forbidden City becomes a feline-themed festival ground. Banners go up, embroidered with absolutely nothing. Literal blank silk banners. The absence is the point, says the imperial artist, adjusting his monocle. She exists beyond form. These banners represent her non-presence. The cook rolls his eyes so hard they nearly fall into the rice pot. The main dish of the banquet? Fish bones, arranged in complex spirals on lacquered plates. Not because she likes bones, no one knows that, but because, as the Emperor states, she has already eaten the flesh. We merely witness the aftermath. That's the theme of the entire feast. Everything has already been eaten. Empty bowls, licked clean plates, half-sipped tea. It's genius, actually. Saves a ton on groceries. Still, the chefs panic anyway. Because what if she does show up, and she's hungry? They prep 5 types of grilled sardines, 2 trays of shaved tuna, and 1 plate of moonlight glazed salmon, whatever that means. You, of course, are assigned to document it all. You sit at a low table with a ceremonial scroll, writing things like 1:04 p.m. Emperor applauds absence of meowing, declares it polite silence. 1:16 p.m. Eunuch tripped over a cushion, blamed a tail, nobody questions it. 1:33 p.m. Empress insists the cat sat in her lap. For 3 full seconds, she is radiant. You write it all down, because at this point, truth and fiction are just playing chess with no pieces. Then come the gifts. Oh boy, the gifts. The Emperor brings her a jade hairbrush, in case she ever decides to have hair. The Empress offers a poem. You who curl where no eyes linger, steal our thoughts and make us purr. A visiting noble presents a custom-designed litter box carved from ivory. Another dignitary gifts a basket of imaginary mice. Each is described in excruciating detail: color, personality, favorite genre of opera. The cat accepts none of these, or all of them. It's unclear. One boy, just a servant, leaves her a single red string. He places it quietly on the floor, bows, and walks away. Later that night, it's gone. The Emperor has it framed. As twilight nears, the main event begins. The throne room is cleared. A satin pillow is placed in the center. It's fluffed hourly, guarded by 4 men with bamboo poles and feather dusters, just in case. Then, with full ceremonial procession, the Emperor enters and bows, not to the court, but to the pillow. "Happy birthday," he says, voice soft. "Thank you for staying." He gestures. An orchestra plays a song titled "Pause in the Mist." It's 47 seconds long, entirely made of harps, bells, and 1 string pluck that sounds like a yawn. Everyone applauds. You just listen. And maybe, just maybe, in that moment, you hear purring, or your stomach is growling. Either way, it feels real. As the sun disappears and lanterns flicker to life, fireflies swirl around the garden. A servant swears he saw two floating eyes in the shadows, blinking slowly. Someone else hears a sneeze behind the chrysanthemums. Everyone freezes. A single flower falls over. No wind. "She's here," someone whispers. But no one moves. The emperor smiles. She's enjoying herself. Historians still argue whether this banquet actually happened or was a metaphor for invisible power. One scribe, writing decades later, simply said, "That day we feasted on imagination, and it was delicious." You keep your copy of the event scroll. Sometimes when you reread it, the ink smells faintly like sardines. Section 10. The night it happens, the air is thick, like it's holding its breath. You're in your quarters, wrapping up the day's entries. The Feast of the Empty Pillow was a success by all accounts. And yet, something about it still feels unfinished. Too carefully orchestrated, too quiet. You pause, listening. No bells, no wind. Just something. Then, out of nowhere, a meow. Not soft, not distant, loud, present, right outside your door. You freeze. The scroll in your hand slips to the floor. Ink smudges. Your heart thumps like a war drum under a silken cloak. And there it is again. Me-oh. Playful, annoyed, a bit dramatic if you're being honest. You rise, open the door. Nothing. But the hallway smells like candle smoke and plum blossoms. A bowl of milk that wasn't there before now rests beside your shoe. Still warm, still full. You blink once. And that's when the entire palace erupts. A third meow echoes off the golden beams of the Hall of Tranquility. The guards drop their spears. One poet faints. A general starts crying because he knew she liked him best. A servant reports being tapped by something soft and cold. Another hears scratching at the back of the moon gate. And then the throne room doors swing open. No hands, no gust, just slow, regal creaking. A sound the staff will later describe as definitely feline, possibly divine. You're already running through the corridors. Others are too. Some barefoot, some holding feather toys. All breathless. Because this is it. The cat is here. The emperor stands alone in the throne room, arms crossed behind his back. He doesn't look surprised. "I told you," he says, barely above a whisper. "She was always watching." Behind him, on the red silk runner that leads to the throne, pause. Dusty, distinct, wet with moonlight. One step, 2A turn, a tail flick maybe. A court artist throws himself to the ground, sketching wildly onto parchment using tea as ink. It won't last, but the memory is etched in every face. Then comes the sound that changes everything. Prrr. No wind, no echo. just a vibration that seems to rise from the floor and hum inside your bones. A purr so deep it feels like it's been going since the beginning of time, and only now just turned up the volume. She doesn't appear. Not fully. There's a shimmer, a twitch in the air, the faintest outline. 2 ears? A tail, or just wishful thinking? But then the Empress, who's never bought into this nonsense, drops to her knees and whispers, "She brushed against me." Silence falls, and everyone kneels. Historians still debate what was seen that night. Some say it was mass hysteria. Others believe a real cat had simply wandered in. One rogue academic insists it was an elaborate ruse pulled off by the herbalist using mirrors, smoke, and a very well-trained lynx. But everyone agrees on one thing. The cat meowed. And after that, nothing was ever quite the same. In the following days, subtle changes ripple through palace life. People speak softer. Doors are opened with care. Pillows are fluffed more tenderly than ever before. The guards stop carrying bells. "She knows where we are," they say. "She always did." You update the scroll of her journeys with one line. She made a sound. It was the sound of peace. The Emperor becomes even more eccentric, but in a way that makes perfect sense now. He has conversations with silence, consults with shadows, refers to foreign dignitaries as less observant mammals. He commissions a new wing of the palace, not for guests, not for ceremonies, but for naps. It's what she wants, he insists. A quiet place, no shoes allowed. And then there's the tapestry. No one confesses to making it. It appears one morning in the Hall of Dreams, a simple cloth, woven from silken threads, showing 12 paw prints in a circle. No creature, no text, just the prints, stitched in gold. At the center, nothing, which is exactly the point. 1 year later, to the day, she meows again, only once, from the roof, and this time no one runs, they just smile, because now they're listening. Section 11. The Emperor calls for silence. No trumpets, no fanfare, no gongs, just a single bell, rung once, gently, echoing down the jade-tiled corridors like the breath of time itself. You're summoned to the throne room along with the Empress, court officials, the tailors, poets, herbalists, roof inspectors, and yes, even the palace dog, who seems very unsure about why he's been included. The Emperor stands in his softest robe, midnight blue, no embroidery, barefoot, and holds a scroll unlike any you've seen before. The seal is unbroken. You swallow. The room is tense in that peculiar way where everyone knows something huge is about to happen, but nobody has any idea what. You grip your quill tighter. You're the Whisker Chronicler. If something momentous happens, it's on you to get every absurd syllable recorded for future historians to argue about. He unrolls the scroll. The ink glows faintly gold, like it was written with sunbeam juice. He clears his throat. By order of the celestial throne, and with due respect to the eternal pause of the realm's greatest unseen companion. Everyone leans in. From this day forward, Let it be known that no throne shall be considered occupied unless the pillow beside it is warmed. Gasps ripple across the hall. Someone drops a scroll. A scribe whimpers. The palace dog yawns loudly. You blink. Did he just enshrine the cat's pillow into law? Yes. Yes, he did. The decree continues. Furthermore, the Office of Feline Affairs shall be established to oversee placement and fluffing of all royal pillows, ritual warming of fish bones before ceremonial offerings, nightly readings of approved feline poetry to ensure spiritual comfort, maintenance of the whisper shrine in the Garden of Disappearances, and the continued transcription of the Scroll of Her Journeys, Volume 2 and beyond. You glance down at your own notes and realize you've just been promoted to head of feline historical lore and memory preservation, or as the Emperor calls it, Whisker Archivist First Class. The Empress raises an eyebrow. And what if the cat doesn't appear again? The Emperor smiles. She doesn't have to. She already has. A hush falls. You write that down. Slowly. Historians still argue whether this decree was political genius, total madness, or a coping mechanism for a ruler too deep into a very strange bit. One theory suggests the emperor was sending a hidden message to foreign courts, a coded way of saying, "You may have armies, but we have invisible cosmic cats on our side." Another theory, he just really loved that cat. The decree is carved into jade, hung next to portraits of past rulers. Each new emperor henceforth would have to sit not alone, but beside an empty pillow, warmed daily, fluffed exactly 7 times before sunrise. Failure to do so, technically treason, and it didn't stop at the throne room. The people embraced it. Noble houses began reserving empty seats at banquets for her. Market stalls set out tiny cushions between their wares. One temple even built a cat-sized altar and burned incense made from mouse-shaped herbs. A group of tailors launched an annual fashion show titled Silence, Elegance, and Whiskers. The winning design? A robe made entirely of empty thread. You keep chronicling, day after day. You've filled 6 volumes, not just with sightings or sounds or stories, but with changes. The way people carry themselves now, the way they speak gently to silence, the way they pause before sitting anywhere, as if checking to see if someone is already there. Even the palace dog now walks slightly softer, and every year, on the Feast of the Empty Pillow, you add a single line to the scroll. This year's, "She didn't come," or maybe she did. The tea was extra warm. You seal it in gold, bow to the scroll, and exhale deeply. Because whether she's truly there or not, she's still shaping everything. Section 12. Years pass. The palace changes, as all things do. Walls are rebuilt. Gardens redrawn. Emperors fade into paintings. But the pillow remains. Always there, beside the throne. Sometimes fluffed with reverence. Sometimes with quiet amusement. But never ignored. You're older now. Your ink-stained fingers are slower, your robe more worn than regal. Yet every morning, you walk the same path, down the quiet corridor, past the koi pond, around the whisper shrine, and into the Hall of Echoes, where the scroll of her journeys grows longer by the day. There are 37 volumes now, some filled with poetry, some with maps of prints, some with arguments over whether her sneeze that one time meant she was displeased with the garden layout. All of them loved. You know them all by heart. Some days, you wonder if you imagined it all. The prints, the purring, the feast, the meow. Maybe it was palace fever, a glorious shared hallucination. One long joke that everyone was too afraid or too enchanted to stop telling. And then you see it. A tail flick. Just outside the window. No wind, no reflection. Just a shimmer and a twitch. Gone in an instant. But enough. You smile. Still here. The Empress, now retired and suspiciously fond of cat-shaped jewelry, invites you for tea. She tells you she once heard the cat laugh. You raise an eyebrow. She was laughing at my new slippers, she insists. They squeaked. She hates squeaky things. You write it down, of course. Empress, laughed at by cat. Slippers squeaked. Sound now banned. Palace law. It's official. You've trained your successor. A quiet girl who leaves bits of string everywhere and hums lullabies when she thinks no one's listening. She's already filled 2 scrolls with possible dreams the cat might have had. Your heart aches with pride. And now, as you sit on the garden bench during a pink dusk, the breeze soft and the world half asleep, you see them. Paw prints. Just 5. In the dust by the koi pond. Fresh. You don't chase, you don't call out. You just bow your head and whisper, "Thanks for the visit." She doesn't respond, but maybe, just maybe, the wind feels warmer as it passes your cheek. And so the story goes on. One pillow, one palace, one invisible cat. And all of us, still listening. You're still here. That's good. Because now the palace is quiet again. The lanterns are low. The tea has gone lukewarm. The stories have been tucked away for the night. The scrolls rest gently on the shelves. The garden is still. The koi pond glimmers under a soft moon, like a mirror only dreams can understand. Somewhere in the shadows of thought, a paw presses against the floor. Somewhere in the folds of silence, a purr begins. Not loud, not eager, just there. And that's enough. Because in this palace of whispers and wonder, things don't have to be seen to be real. They just have to be felt. And if you listen, right at the edge of sleep, you might just hear a meow, soft, ancient, amused, but definitely real. Good night.